Does anybody have any corrections or anything they want added or changed or anything from last month's meeting minutes?
All right, I'm just gonna try to screen.
That's fine.
Right.
If not, will somebody make an order to accept the minutes?
The minutes from May 25th.
Great. No second,
Second.
and everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Great, all right. And so the third item on the agenda this evening is Christina and Plastic Free July and Skip the Stuff.
Okay, so I'll start with skip the stuff and
You want to just introduce yourself for anybody who doesn't know?
yes, so I'm also gonna pass these this way, and maybe if we have just one of each on each table, then people can just share. So my name is Christina Dubin.
Sorry to
I,
interrupt you.
yeah.
I think we just want to do it as a share screen and then the recording will capture it.
Oh, okay.
I don't think it'll capture it otherwise. Sorry to interrupt.
Okay. Where's the Zoom? Remember, I don't have readers yet.
Oh, right.
Sorry about that. Hard part. Yep, sorry, there's all the clicks that are happening. Present. Somewhere here. No. Okay. So I'm Christina Dubin. I live in Portsmouth. I have kids in the Little Harbor school system. You get out of there. I am the campaigns coordinator for the Surfrider Foundation New Hampshire chapter. And I'm also a full-time community organizer for Beyond Plastics, which is a nationwide project out of Bennington College with the mission to end plastic pollution everywhere. That's all. So Skip the Stuff is a campaign that was originally introduced by Upstream Solutions, but there are many different versions of it. And I created a Skip the Stuff toolkit on the Beyond Plastics website, and there's lots of different model ordinances, Just Zero, Beyond Plastics, and many others. So this is something that's been around for a while, and the idea is that we have all of this waste coming from takeout foodware accessories, right? So you can see up here, billions of disposable food service items that are creating millions of tons of waste. And a lot of these are not necessary. People don't want them. They're just included by default. They are not recyclable, and I'll skip ahead to another slide and come back. Well, I know Jess has presented before on plastics, the plastics problem in here, but I'll just say that less than 6% of plastics get recycled, and plastics 3 through 7 are not at all. 1s and 2s in states with container deposit bills have high rates of recycling because it's a clean stream versus those being in a commingled situation. So so these items are not recyclable. They're not getting recycled. If they're compostable, there are issues that I won't go into, but there's issues with compostables and bioplastics. That's not, they don't have legal definitions. They're defined within the Federal Trade Commission's green guides, but those are not like legal definitions in terms of across the board. So there can actually be fossil fuel-based plastic in a bioplastic up to 80%. They can have PFAS and other chemicals, just like plastics can. If they don't make it to an industrial facility, then they're going to degrade into microplastics, just like their fossil fuel counterparts. So, and there are true compostables that actually do break down in the backyard. But that's a whole nother presentation. So the answer here is really simple. It's just switch it to opt in versus opt out. And so the idea is that the customer is the one who requests the item. So if the customer is ordering takeout, they can verbally say, I would like utensils. Or if they're doing it online, they would have to check a box and opt in. It's important to note here, the idea is not for the restaurant. The burden should not be on the restaurant to ask the customer customer. And this can sometimes create friction where restaurants will say, I'm a little worried that they're going to be upset if they get home and they don't have those utensils. There is a little bit of a behavior change here, but overwhelmingly, especially post-pandemic, we see that people are taking these items home or to offices with reusable silverware, etc. So not only does it lower waste, and there's cost savings for the restaurant. So it's a pretty easy sell to restaurants, right? Especially when they're trying to still recover. You can see this is just one case study, and I am spacing where this restaurant is right now. I want to say like Maryland or something like that. They have the skip the stuff. So they're asking before, and it says that they are asking, but again, we want to flip that and have the customer ask if they want these accessory items. And then if you look down to the bracket, we have a polystyrene ban. So it's similar, right? They just removed that from their restaurant and made swaps. So it's a really great thing for restaurants and for the city, for residents. And where we are at in this campaign is a voluntary presentation to restaurants. So we're just trying to get restaurants to voluntarily say, we're going to skip this stuff. And they can put the sign that I passed around in their window front next to their cash register. And then we have different tools to get people to share this with the community. So I had a letter to the editor published in Seacoast Online, Portsmouth Herald. We really want other people publishing letters to the editor. We have social media write-ups so people can share this on their personal accounts or in organizations, other organizations. So we're really just trying to get the word out about what is Skip the Stuff, why is it good, why do we want to do that? And the idea is that we would get to a point where we'd want to pass an ordinance because we would want, as new restaurants and businesses come in, we would want them to come in under that and just immediately be skipping the stuff. This is also paired with, or kind of dovetails with the Surfriders Ocean Friendly Restaurants certification program. So I'm really excited to say that we have 3 restaurants now in Portsmouth. There's actually a 4th one, but I can't announce it yet because they're finishing up some paperwork. And that 4th one has, I think, like 8 locations or 7 locations outside of Portsmouth. So it's like a big deal. Yeah. You might be able to guess what that crew. And so these restaurants have to meet 7 criteria, and then they have 3 optional criteria. And one of the 7 is that they have to skip the stuff. So they're already, even if they don't have a skip the stuff poster, they're ocean friendly. So they're already doing that. And then the 2 on the bottom, Parked and Rye and Stoneface, I just found out yesterday, is skipping the stuff. So I'm going to get posters over to them. We'll shout out to them on social media. And then in Dover, the Dover Plastics Reduction Group, which used to be Dover Democrats, but whatever, but they're not partisan. They don't have a partisan affiliation anymore. So they've been doing a lot of work with restaurants. So they have a number of restaurants in Dover that are participating. So it's really exciting. And we just want to continue, getting this out, getting the word out to restaurants. And again, just building that, the awareness of it, the practice of it in the restaurants, and then hopefully, get an ordinance passed. So I think, yeah, that was it. So I do have, there's an information sheet there and the posters. I do have a couple sample ordinances. One is from Just Zero, and one is from Beyond Plastics that you're welcome to take a look at if you want. And I think that's it. If you have any questions.
So thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Can we approach restaurants and ask them to do this? Because I
Absolutely.
just copied the QR code, so I have the
Yes.
information.
So I think the
Because
best
there's
way to-
one I think of, and every time I order it to go, I say, I don't want to give too specific here, but none of the condiments on the side, and they always are in the bag.
Yes, so I think the best way to do this actually is through existing relationships, right? Your favorite
Okay.
coffee shop, your favorite restaurant,
Right.
and you know, you can keep these sheets. You'll notice I had a typo on my email address, so I have to print some more anyway. But it's really easy to explain. This is not complicated, right? So I think going somewhere and just saying, hey, do you want to have, you know, all these takeout accessories be opt-in versus opt-out? And then I can get them a poster, or I can give you posters and you can get it to them so they can stick it up. So I really want, you know, these to be up so that, you know, residents see it and also tourists are seeing it, you know, we're kind of creating a buzz. And, you know, again, we're going to shout them out on social media and, we want them to feel good about it and that in turn to maybe bring new customers in because they appreciate
Mhm.
the waste reduction that the restaurant's doing.
That's
Yeah.
great. Thanks.
Excellent. Great.
Yeah.
Are there other ways that we can support you, Christina?
So, yeah, I mean, if, again, if you wanted to write a letter to the editor, so there's a toolkit on the Beyond Plastics, so beyondplastics.org. I can't give you the full URL, 'cause it's too long, but if you go there and you click on the Act tab, you'll scroll down and see all these toolkits, and one of them is Skip the Stuff, so you'll see this graphic. And if you click on that, it has a sample letter to the editor, and it also links to our letter to the editor writing kit. If someone has never written one before, it goes through the whole process, how to do that, how to submit it. And then same with social media. The social media toolkit takes you to a page with pre-written posts that are like template posts. You just have to plug in your information, graphics. So it just makes it really easy. You could certainly just write your own post. And if you're at a place, if you're at a restaurant, one of these restaurants that I had here, you know, it'd be great if you normally, you know, say, oh, I just had a great dinner at, or, you know, had a coffee at White Heron, and guess what? They're skipping the stuff. And it's just hashtag skip the stuff, all one word.
Great.
Does it only relate with takeaway orders, or does it also apply for in restaurants?
So skip the stuff is just for takeout,
Okay,
but that being said, I mean, there's some restaurants that will then like remove self-service areas or make something bulk and put it into paper cups instead of the condiment packets.
right.
Yep, so that could be certainly suggestions as part of it. They're skipping the stuff. on prep ones.
I have a couple restaurants in mind who I think kind of already do this. So like, what's the value on that side? Is it just kind of that like
So Parked-
exposure and?
yeah, Parked was like that. They were, it was low
Yeah.
hanging fruit. They were like, we're already doing that. And I'm like, great, put up a poster.
Yeah.
It's because it lets the customers know that you're doing that and it gets them thinking about that wastefulness that might be happening in other places.
Behavioral
And
change.
this is like low bar of entry here,
Mm.
right? Like we really want to be moving up to actually having like reusables for all on-site dining and reusable takeaway containers, which also working on a pilot project for. So we'll get there. But yeah, I think it's more of like an awareness,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, and it'll help those other restaurants that aren't doing it to get there.
I do have a general question.
Yeah.
Is this the kind of thing that the municipality would completely stay out of? Maybe that's a Peter answer or question. Just because my other residents, it's actually, you know, citywide. And I know that larger cities do it.
Yeah, New York City just passed a skip the stuff bill.
Yeah,
So that means that if it's an ordinance that gets passed, then it's enforced by the.
Yeah, and I think, I guess this municipality isn't getting involved in this to actually require.
They've tried, I think we're continue to work towards it.
Toward it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so it might
It's
be
a short
something, you know,
answer.
with enough traction.
Been
kind of
some effort. It
grassroots
needs a
group.
little more, it needs a little more support, but yeah,
Okay, cool.
ultimately they
speak to
can.
that,
The
Josh.
answer is they can.
Josh can definitely speak to
Yeah,
that.
Do
okay,
more, yeah.
If you get the support
Yeah.
behind
Yeah.
it. Got it, okay, it's a good way to start it.
Yeah.
Just a
So,
quick observation, I would say that, what do we have there? 6, 7 restaurants, out of the 100 and something in Portsmouth, it seems like
Right.
there's some low hanging fruit here.
Absolutely, yes. And so I will say Dover has many more because they just had like a restaurant team on the ground going around and doing a survey, single-use survey. So we're just sitting down with restaurant owners, talking to them, doing these surveys. And we just didn't have the volunteer capacity for that. So we're a little bit behind in Portsmouth and would love the help in going around to restaurants. And yeah, if you know the owner or again, if it's somewhere you frequent and they know you, it's really easy to just walk up and talk to them about it. Not during a busy hour though. So as far as Plastic Free July, I saw that on there and I don't know if you want to talk about what you were thinking in terms of the
Yeah, we will
community
do that.
conversations later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I did submit a potential proclamation to the mayor that includes like declaring July plastic, I think it's Plastic Reduction Month, and it would include some skip the stuff language surrounding that. So hopefully that might happen. And we're just calling it like Skip the Stuff Summer. So that's kind of the idea. This is like the main focus that we're, I guess that I'm focusing on here. Beyond plastics nationally, I have a whole toolkit and I'm working with groups who are doing various events, some of them bringing plastic waste back to district legislative offices to get behind, whichever bills they're trying to get passed. So if you're interested in a particular Plastic Free July event, I have a ton of resources, and I will be participating in Jess's community conversations. So
I can think of this as like would be a really cool thing to add to, I mean, we have so many events that are so restaurant based, like Restaurant Week. Or, I'm blanking on the food festival. You know what I'm talking about? The giant food festival that happens every year. Can't think
Taste
of
of
the
the
name.
Nation, that
Thank
one?
you. Taste of
That
the
just
Nation.
happened?
It just
Yeah.
happened.
Yep.
And like, how do, like, that seems like a really good way to, kind of integrate this kind of stuff. So I think those are conversations that would be really great to have, like, hey,
agreed.
like Restaurant Week is working with this concept. And
Yeah.
even if it's just temporary for that thing, hoping that restaurants and the behavioral change could be adopted
Right. Yeah.
past that.
Yeah, definitely. That would be, I mean, I don't know if it's too late for Restaurant Week.
Well, it's 2 a year.
The next one I think is in November or something.
Oh,
I think we
okay.
just
So,
had
yeah.
one, didn't we, recently?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Summer
Yeah.
and
So
the
Paul
next
get out a
is
lot.
in the
so-
fall.
Hopefully. Yes, that would be great. And there are some other connections that people have made with like, what's the Seacoast Eats local, the
Mhm.
online, the
Facebook
social
group.
media,
Right.
Facebook group or whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah, so things like that, it would be great to speak to the people that are heading it and yeah, partner with them.
Building on what Tori said, Seacoast Can
Yeah.
as a committee that's working for a year round. Picking a restaurant each month to feature a vegan menu. And that committee this would be a really easy add-on. So nice connection. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. That'd be great. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Christina.
You're welcome. Close the night.
Everybody's all set with that. We can move on to the next item, which is the Community Engagement Committee update. You want to do that about transportation? Did you have? an
I
update?
could, or you could, or,
I will talk to the one in July if you want to speak to the
all
one.
right. Write the date down. The Thursday, June 29th, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. over in the Levinson Room in the library. So it's going to be 6:30 to 8, an hour and a half. And what's nice about it, it's the first of 5 or more conversations that the community is going to have regarding what we can do to get to a climate safe planet, basically, but using the cap to support it this year, and this will be the first of the series. So it will be ongoing. So we're looking for continuity. This is kind of our pilot year. Bill Lyons, who wanted to be here tonight, is doing grandparent sitting for twins in the Midwest somewhere. So I am, we have a wonderful three-part sponsorship for this, which is what we wanted to do. Smart Growth is a co-sponsor, and they're using their mailing list. And this is the first event that they've had since COVID came on. So I ran into somebody the other day and they were telling me about the conversation. Where'd you hear about it? So everybody who would like, we have this poster. It's, I usually wouldn't print it out, but thanks to Portsmouth Climate Action and to Jess and her design connections, we have a logo that is there. And so it's just, talk about community. This is truly a manifestation. When I heard emotional connection, people care and people want to give their time. And that's what this is about. There will be an agenda. There will be presenters of best practices on mobility. There will be a chance to dialogue in small groups and then come back and feed the information back to the city for the dialogue. There's several other people. Want to add anything? Effie, does that, Jess, want to add anything to that?
No, I don't think so. I think that was.
That was it?
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Well, I did one other thing. The agenda will be, and we want feedback from everybody. This will be a template agenda, which hopefully we can learn from what works and doesn't work. And then in July, when we do the plastics, you can pick up and go from there. So you want to go from there?
Sure. So we are working on the community conversation for July, which in honor of Plastic Free July is going to be about waste and specifically around plastic, recycling, and composting. And so Christina has graciously, the tentative date right now is Tuesday, July 25th, I believe. Hopefully it will be in the Levinson room as well at 6:30. I'm waiting to confirm details with the library on that. Christina has graciously agreed to be one of our content informant people and speak to the plastics issue. Tom Irwin, who is the vice president of the Conservation Law Foundation from New Hampshire, who is a Portsmouth resident, but spends most of his day in Concord, working on rules and regs and where we are as a state about how we manage waste and what we're doing around that, has also agreed to participate. And I'm hoping the other piece we might get is somebody from DPW to talk to where we are as a community and what we're doing as a city, what options we have at the transfer station right now. I don't think a lot of people know all the things that they can bring to the transfer station, and just maybe our success rates. If we can get that information, like Christina said, with so little being recycled, how are we doing as a community? And do we need to relook at that? And again, as Bert mentioned, we're kind of waiting on some of the things to see how transportation goes, to see what kind of participation we get. And then do we just have a big group discussion after and see what people think and what we should be doing as a community? And again, sending all that feedback back to the CAP consultant and hoping to help shape the climate action plan. And that's about it. Hopefully we'll partner with the library on this one. Smart Growth, if it works timing wise. The only other thing I would add is that we've also talked about climate change and health impacts. We have a nurse who's very involved in the Portsmouth Climate Action Group, and she's expressed interest about doing something around that. And I know Counselor Cook had talked about resiliency and that piece too, so that's definitely one that we keep thinking about, just trying to get people to engage, to help organize and figure out what these look like. Questions? Yes.
More comments. So Tom Irwin's actually the president of New Hampshire chapter of
Mhm.
CLF. He's vice president of the organization itself. He's an all-around great guy who I've known for the better part of the decade.
Yes, and very knowledgeable.
Yes.
So I think he'll be, thank you. I know he has like a dual
Dual
title, but I always forget exactly how that works. So thank you for
What is the
clarifying.
title, Josh?
So he's I believe the title's president, but he's the person in charge of the Conservation Law Foundation of New Hampshire. But they fall under the Conservation Law Foundation, which has essentially a branch in each state in New England. So
I'd love to put a plug in for green building and infrastructure
Okay.
with the hope that maybe we could tie it to some of the work that I'm not gonna jinx and say it will be done.
Well, if that is something that, like I said, we, part of organizing these things is just getting people to help organize who can speak to the issue
Mhm.
and that kind of stuff. So we can definitely help.
Sorry, I can
Yeah.
hear what you're saying. I'm sorry.
I said that wanted to put a plug in for green building and infrastructure as a
And,
topic,
and
as a topic.
another thing that we're looking at, the original thought was there were 5 sectors in the climate action plan. We were thinking to have them go along with each of the sectors. And so, Tori, your name came up several times. And that's the kind of thing that if we can plan ahead and try to relate it back to the sectors and another thing that will fit in here, at each of the conversations, we'll do a plug for Bright Action, hoping that Bright Action will be a platform that people can sign up and take personal action or organizational action through a church. So we're trying to get an integrated program. We don't know what's going to work, but that's kind of the fun of it.
And I love the idea of doing like resiliency in the face of sea level rise and bringing in some of those experts that spoke
Mhm.
at the Keeping History Above Water conference, because there are a few local experts, and I don't think a lot of our local individuals had the opportunity to have access to what they said.
I'm sure you already have these connections, but I have some connections at UNH to the Coastal Resiliency Group.
Yeah.
They do really great work.
Kate, would that have a potential tie-in with co-benefits and health? So, I mean, they can, well, not to get over, we only have an hour and a half. And I'm thinking, where could we bring things together that will both do greenhouse gas reduction and resilience and co-benefits? And it's like the restaurant that they can reduce the plastic, save money, and get more customers. So that's a good, anyway,
I would almost say that's, if there's any of those topics that it comes into, it'd probably be more green buildings.
I was thinking exactly the same.
Yeah,
thing.
because indoor air quality and is very much a part of that conversation. The only thing I warn in that is that will pull the conversation towards green buildings and away from green buildings and infrastructure as a whole, which can be a direction we go. But it's,
that's.
the bigger conversation is infrastructure and construction and just the whole pie.
And that's
So-
where if
and
there's breakout groups, people could go to their own interest and then come back. So that's what we'll learn how to structure it. So those are 2 great. Most of us haven't even thought long, then you say, okay, where do you want to go? And then, so that's terrific.
Yeah, so I think as things develop, if you want to connect me with.
Yeah.
The nurse, I think we could definitely figure out how to make that work, because they are really good.
Resiliency or
Green buildings and kind of more specifically indoor air quality and health, but I mean. They're very,
and what about energy?
Kind of ties into the resiliency side of it too.
yeah,
I
I
was
mean,
thinking-
they're all.
All connected. Yeah.
That's the problem and the solution.
Maybe maybe that's something we need is just everybody put their ideas about conversations out somewhere in an email. And then we can all sort of shake it through and see what makes sense to do collectively or needs to stand on their own or that kind of thing.
Yeah, I
Just-
almost feel like
I feel
health
like-
could be like one of those breakout rooms, like health in relation to whatever the topic is, right? 'Cause health and
Right.
transportation is gonna be a thing, health and buildings, health and resiliency, like these are all gonna be.
And when I think of
Open
code
clusters.
benefits, which kind of goes across the board, I always go to the health ones first,
Mhm.
because that's my background too. So, yeah, I agree with you. I think a lot of them just naturally weave and overlap, but I think, as Bert said, we only have an hour and a half. So to address these things well, we want to make sure that each one sort of has a focus and an intention, and we're all clear about what we hope to accomplish. So that, yeah, I don't know. How would we go about doing that? Just on the email chain? Anybody who has ideas about what topics should be for these conversations can throw them out and then,
Yeah, I can put the original list of 5 out to the group.
yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
we have
staying-
Health, and we talked about resilience in terms of preparedness. So it included some health issues like planning for extreme heat, asthma, higher rates of insect-borne illnesses and all the things that the other just listed recently.
So maybe.
I really like the idea of tying health into all of the topics.
Mhm.
If nothing else, because that's something that everybody cares about, and it's kind of like a little gateway drug, like, oh, how is this gonna affect my health? And then they kind of see all the other associated things around it.
You can almost be in that template, like these presentations are always gonna have some component of
Piece about
this.
how, yep.
Um,
And I think my understanding from Bill is that they, Sabre is going to participate in the transportation one. So I think that'll probably be one of the things that they talk about is the health benefits of walking and riding your bike versus, those pieces. So,
I would definitely put a plug for trying to keep in those 5 categories of the cap. I think that that's really important to always be tying back to this cap. And like, we're having these conversations, they're gonna relate to this, we're gonna get more guidance on these things. So that people just over time really build a recognition with the initiatives.
mhm.
So to add that you might add the context of that triad, people, planet, profit,
Mhm.
because it really very much fits exactly what you're talking about.
Kathy, I just want to check if you send that out, are you okay if people respond back to you so you could collect them for?
Sure, and then we can use it at the Portsmouth Climate
Wednesday meeting,
Action
yeah.
meeting.
So anybody who has ideas, when you get it from Effie, just respond back and she'll bring it to a Portsmouth Climate Action Wednesday and we'll integrate what we can.
And before we leave community engagement, it's not to do with community conversations.
Bright action.
Yes. So your ad for Bright Action of the month, we're up to 50 households, which is really great. And today I got a preview of the app being adapted for cell phones. And it would be familiar to you if you're on Bright Action, but it looks great. And I just think for a lot more users, it'll be appealing to have the app on a cell phone.
Yep.
If you haven't signed up yet, and I know who you are, please feel free to email me to ask, or if you go on or know someone else who's on and ask, that's fine too. But it's really a great tool for all of us. So I hope you'll give it a try.
Do you know when the phone app might be?
Yeah, they say within a couple of weeks, so I say within a month.
Okay.
Software.
Yeah.
But it looked great.
Awesome.
Effie, I had a question for you as somebody who's really engaged in that. Is there the opportunity for us to give them feedback on how they calculate the stuff or do the stuff?
Yes, though, we are I don't know what to call it, but a budget customer. We're not like a deluxe rate customer.
Sure.
And they have a lot of customers, so they would take it as, input for their program and their future ideas. For example, I don't think yet they have an action about divestiture, which is something Bill McKibben has been pushing. A lot of us have heard about Third Act and moving our money out of certain banks. And that's not listed as an action, and I think it should be. And they were responsive, but it's not there yet.
Right.
So, yeah.
I was thinking, I went and did it and, one of my big personal hits was that I have to travel a fair amount,
Yeah.
airline travel. So I'm like, all right, I'm gonna make that commitment and buy offsets every time. So I've been doing that.
Yeah.
But it's like, there's not a means of like, oh, I just took a trip and here's an offset and that like drops the
Oh,
amount.
per
So I
trip.
feel like I'm making progress.
Right.
It's still this like thing for the year that's just like, black cloud over me.
Right. Yeah.
So you don't get that feedback that you're
Yeah.
doing something
Yeah, that's,
in the right
that would be-
direction.
yeah. And if you wanted to give it to me or Fred Calcinari, we talk with them a lot, so we could forward it, or if you want to forward it to them directly, there's a little question mark in the lower left corner where you could communicate with them directly.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
And just to add to that, even though we have the silver level or whatever, they have said, my understanding is if they get enough feedback from things globally, then they will add them to the platform regardless
Yeah,
of
that's
your
right, Jess.
subscription
Yeah.
level. So yeah, if
Yeah,
enough
I
people
don't mean-
start saying, hey, can you put in something about offsets here? Because we're trying,
Right.
then
Yeah.
it might motivate them to do it.
That's a great point, because they really are responsive. It's just they can't like have us call one day and expect to see it the
Sure,
next week.
sure, yeah.
So,
Especially from a relatively small customer.
yeah.
Is there a community of communities? Are we in touch with other communities that are using Bright Action? Because that's the way to get the attention of a software developer, is that multiple customers
Yeah,
come up with the
we
same request.
don't. I know of a few of them just from our work on the cap earlier.
right.
But I'm not in touch really.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Something we may want to look into. more
Yeah.
Extra leverage.
Thanks.
Anybody have anything else about community engagement, questions or things to share or otherwise?
Hi, I don't know if this is the time to bring it up, but my name's Melissa Regazio. I've lived on the seacoast for about 14 years and in Portsmouth now for about 2.5. And I'm a designer and I'm a lighting designer. And I wanted to bring up, and I apologize, I wasn't able to make the other meetings. I don't know if anyone's discussed the issue of light pollution. And I wondered if we could talk a little bit about that and consider it, maybe add it to one of our goals for the committee. It has devastating effects on our ecosystem, and a lot of the awareness is just starting to come out now.
Mhm. And so do you have, just in general broadly as,
5 minutes.
so,
Here's some facts about light pollution.
sure.
I'm sorry, is this the time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was.
Would you mind?
Just
getting
come up to it.
microphones? Because you won't get recorded very well if
You
you're over
come
there.
grab
So
Sling because I have to go to a meeting, so perfect.
I just kind of wanted to introduce this subject today. And I have been talking to people at the International Dark Sky Association about possibly coming up and presenting.
Could you say your name again? So. it
Oh,
doesn't-
I'm sorry. My name is Melissa Regazio and I live in Portsmouth. And just briefly, light pollution is inappropriate or excessive use of artificial light. And according to Johann Eckloff, light pollution is the easiest of all environmental problems to solve. We as private individuals can, with little cost, reduce the amount of our light pollution. So just a few facts. Light at night is pollution. The moon itself is 12 to 13% reflective. So no lights on, reasonable sky, we still get some light. So it's a question of how much more are we putting into the atmosphere. Sadly, we've lost 10% of our visibility of the stars in the last 10 years. And this is a problem that's really rising. Unfortunately, LEDs have not made it better. There's a greenwashing of LEDs. What we have to do is just be much more mindful of how we use light and where we use light. And there's so much building going on here in Portsmouth. Very adverse effects on people, plants, our pollinators, our wildlife, our birds. For people, it's obvious. It's melatonin suppression. It's messing with our circadian rhythm, all the things, bad things that you hear about blue light exposure. In plants, I was just at several lectures in New York on this, and one given by the National Park Service. And I had been looking into it because I'm working on a building that is going to be dark sky compliant, but I was floored by some of the information I heard. Growing seasons have changed. Spring is 9 days earlier and fall is 5 days later because of light pollution. Trees under lights, plants under lights hold their leaves longer. In pollinators, we're dependent on pollinators for 30% of our food source. And I think we've all noticed that our insects are disappearing. 70% of our insect population decline is due to light pollution. What happens often is like the moths, they get trapped in the light, they go to the light, they get confused, they don't pollinate, they don't procreate. They're easy targets and we're losing them. Birds rely on natural light cycles to cue mating and reproduction. Many species, threatened species do not, 25% of bird threatened species do not experience natural light cycles. Similar stats for amphibians, our mammals, marine life in particular, and there's a lot of light on the water here that I really think we can try to mitigate at least some of it. So the solutions are easy, and I printed some extra ones of these. It's just 5 things that need to be done, and it's low-hanging fruit, honestly. All light should have a clear purpose. And if you walk around town at night in Portsmouth, particularly the banks, which I understand need to be lit, but they're so bright. They're not lighting what really needs to be lit. Light needs to be targeted. We don't need any lights that shine upward. There's no reason to light the sky. That's a huge waste. Light should be no brighter than necessary, which I think is kind of a big point. The parking lots, I mean, the glare is just outrageous. I understand safety concerns, but the reality is there are no, there's no data that says brighter is safer. So it's a matter of controlling, turning down lights, turning off lights, putting lights on sensors. Many communities where they've done case studies, they have after midnight until dawn, whenever the street lights are on, they've turned them down 60%. And the result is energy savings, cost savings, and everyone says no one's even noticed. And and color also is important. Using the warm, not the blue light, the warmer lights. So there's some simple solutions. I do think Portsmouth, ultimately, I think it would be wonderful to have some city ordinances regarding existing and new. I know it's not easy to get those through, but I also think, and this was emphasized at the conferences as well, once people understand light pollution and it has really devastating effects on our ecosystem. I thought it was more about like aesthetics, and it's really very, very damaging. And there's actually, I think I left my things over there. I mean, there's information coming out all the time on how detrimental this is. And I would like to, I have some friends that are interested. As I said, I'm a designer. I'm not affiliated with a group at the moment. I am working with the Dark Sky Alliance people. But I would really like to see, some effort, maybe, the ordinances are tricky, I realize, but just approaching maybe some of the local businesses. A lot of the storefronts are so bright at night. They just don't have to be. And again, we can use sensors, we can dim. There's a building on Pleasant Street and the new food court building. They're lit up all night long. The building on Pleasant Street, the 4-story one, every interior light is on in that building all night long. And there's no reason in a lot of buildings, there are exterior lights on and interior lights on, step lights on during the day, even the library, which I absolutely love, and that's a little thing, but just going around and noticing how improvements could be made is something that I personally would really like to work on. And I don't want to take up any more of your time. I'm so appreciative that we have this committee. And I'm, open to any suggestions for how to move forward with this. And then I also have a lot of information that I'd be happy to pass along.
Anybody?
I have a-
I could just say one
Yeah.
thing, in terms of an ordinance, the city does have a requirement that all new commercial lighting anyway for our site review regulations be dark sky friendly. So
Awesome.
we already incorporated that in commercial. It's not necessarily a residential or smaller project, but and the Conservation Commission, Jess is a member of the Conservation Commission, is very sensitive to light in terms of wetland protection. So when someone has
terms
a
of what?
project,
Sorry.
wetlands, so
Oh, the
they're,
wetlands. Oh, yeah.
they're
yeah.
responsible for wetlands and wetland permitting. And they often, like you can speak to it too, Jess, but they often ask the applicant to make sure no light is directed toward the wetland and it's all directed to the parking lot. So kind of focusing more than just dark sky friendly, but even away from any kind of wetlands or sensitive
Yeah,
wildlife
yeah.
areas. So there's a couple little things happening at least, so
Good.
it's not
Yeah.
completely ignored, but it's.
I think it's the
certainly-
sort of thing, like the plastic utensils where if you just bring it up to people and,
Yep.
let them know, people don't realize and, there are lights on all night long when they don't have to be and so forth. So I think there's a lot of room for improvement here.
So Melissa, that's actually something I was gonna ask. A lot of what we found in the topics we've taken up in this commission is about education and awareness. And a lot of us, me included, didn't know how damaging a lot of these things are until they get brought up. Have you come across any good educational material for both businesses? and
Yeah,
publics?
actually, the Dark Sky Alliance has a whole kit. And they have postcards that you can print out with the, 5 most important things that you can do and really kind of step by step. I realized after I looked at it, it's like, oh, I saw all that in my lectures. It's it's fascinating to see, and I would at some point love to bring down to the right audience, someone who could speak on it and show, just the graphs and talk about how, in a lot of European cities, they, Prague turns their lights off at 10, they're fine. You can really, do a lot of this very easily. So.
I was going to suggest Portsmouth Smart Growth. One of their missions is to bring speakers into Portsmouth, national or even international experts on topics to do with urban planning and design and public spaces. So
Fantastic.
they might be really interested in this topic.
Write that down.
Yeah, and they have a website. You can find them.
Awesome.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, great. Thanks for bringing
So,
that.
and definitely, sure, it definitely ties into, all of the eco, smart building and green
Absolutely.
building. And,
Yeah.
and again, people go a little crazy on LEDs because they're inexpensive and, but in some circumstances, they're making things worse. So, we just have to know what we're working with.
Tori?
Yeah, I have a couple comments and hopefully most of them will instill happiness and not. I do. The first one less so, which is I think a lot of people light is safety related. There's a security related thing, and though luckily in this city, that's not the most pivotal concern generally. I think that is the connotation in a lot of people's minds. So I think on the educational front, resources along that line
Hmm.
of, is it actually safe? Is leaving your front, and it's a habitual thing, right? My parents always left the front door lights on because if somebody were to come rob the house, then they would know you're home because the front light's on, even though it's on every day. And that's not actually how it works, right? And but those are the types of, I think, connotations that a lot of people have, and
Yes.
it's habitual.
They
So-
have done studies, particularly in lower income communities, urban communities, where, they just blast light to these poor people all night long.
Mm.
And it has been proven, it hasn't been proven that it helps or
Mhm.
it stops crime. And I know I have quite a bit of that in the literature that I have. And again, we're not saying no lights.
Mhm.
Right.
But, if you really look around, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah.
Just maybe it could just be, just a quick fix to some of the street lights, no light going up and just, lower, turn them down a little bit, and, sensors work and that kind of thing. But yeah, that's the tough one.
Yeah.
And people will hold on to that. It's one of those.
Yeah, it's great to hear that is an angle, because I think that's a hard one for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then on a nicer note than crime and light, I think we'd love to have you engage with some of the stuff we're doing on the green building infrastructure side. you know, and your opinions on specifically how other kind of non-dark sky, but related like LEED has lighting requirements and
Yeah, okay,
downlighting.
yeah.
And is that, you know, is that the realm we're going in? Is that a good way to approach that? Or the greenhouse gas inventory? I mean, we know how much the street lights, you know, and like, is that an angle for it? I think this is one of the things that really just touches on
Yeah.
so
It's-
many.
It's one more rich area to dig into.
Yes,
in
your
case
Portsmouth
you
did
don't.
switch, I think, in 2016 to LED. But there's still a lot of room for improvement, I think, on our streetlights.
Mhm. And even if it's as simple as when they get switched out,
Right.
can
Yeah.
they be this?
Yeah,
I'm not saying
yeah.
we need to go around and do it
And-
all, but
Yeah,
like.
but
small
it's, you know,
guidance.
overall, it does save energy and it saves costs.
Mhm.
We do something upfront.
Melissa, yeah, I don't think you were here when the new bridge came up.
Oh, yeah, I was.
Well, did you know, then do you know Peter Somsich?
I know of him.
He was the one who actually, the bridge had to redo, and I think it was a $80,000 or $90,000 refit
Worth the
for a
lights.
dark sky. So if you want to have somebody who's been through it, and
Okay, awesome.
he's a laser, his professional job, he's a laser light specialist and works for, so as an ally and somebody who's been
Yeah,
through
that'd
it.
be fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Melissa, how do you
Melissa-
spell your last name?
It's
Real fast for me.
RIGAZIO.
And are you comfortable giving out some form of contact information
absolutely,
so
yeah.
that either
Sure.
people here can get in touch with you, or if Josh puts it reflected in the notes, if there are other people who are interested in
Sure.
this?
Do
who-
do you want my email or? My email is just my whole name, Melissa Regazio.
Okay.
@gmail.com.
And I can send it around to tomorrow because I think
Thanks.
we contact.
And I will attach a lot of info. There was one piece that just came out today. There's a lot more coming out about this now. And it is really devastating to the ecosystem.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
It's definitely an
Thank you.
important
Thank you all, and
topic,
I am
so,
sorry, I'm gonna have to miss the next one. I'll be able to be here in July. It's the summer shuffle, but
Yeah. Anybody else that to want to say anything to Melissa before we continue on? Thank you. All right, if we are good with community engagement, we can continue on to the CAP update, which I'm guessing is from that side of the room.
Sure. You want me to go? I didn't prepare anything, but.
Yeah, just gonna wing it.
Go ahead. Go. I'll add if I have other
Yeah,
things to
fill
add.
in.
Yeah.
Okay, so cap update. So end of June has been sort of our goal to get as much feedback from people around the community as possible in terms of the questions we asked in the surveys, like what are your climate impacts that you feel personally? What do you want Portsmouth to be doing? Things like that. And so end of June is our goal to get all that data into the consultants so they can start working on their big priority list of what the citizens really want to see happen. And so they're going to bring that to workshop number 2, be on July 31st. Not completely set on the time yet. It's either 6 to 8 p.m. or 6:30 to 8 p.m. in the Levinson room at the library. And so that's going to be a bit similar to workshop number 1, except a little less presentation and or actually maybe a little more presentation. Talking about the priority strategies they came up with. They're going to come out with a business as usual projection for greenhouse gas emissions, sort of like what we look like in 2030, 2050, things like that. And those will be based off of the 2018 greenhouse gas inventory. And by the end of June or July, they should also have a pretty basic presentation and report for us on the 2021 inventory that John and I gave them our data for. And that will, I think, will still provide some time for back and forth and like interaction, because it will be a workshop type deal, but a lot of it will just be sort of giving out those strategies and asking people to sort of point out what's really important and sort of ranking them and really refining those.
Yeah, the one thing that we talked about, just to add to that, is trying to reach, we've had conversations about the community that we're reaching, that we're reaching with the climate action plan. And it seems like we're trying, any way we can think of to reach further into the community. And I think one of the things we talked about with the consultant is there volunteers who would be willing to go sort of knock on doors in different parts of the community, the neighborhoods where people might not come to regular meetings or might not come out as much. And we haven't formulated that into an ask yet, but that's one of the things we're working on. And so we probably will have time to bring it back to this committee. Maybe not at a meeting, but maybe through our network, emailing and the that we have our robust core of climate ambassadors that we can tap into too. But that's one of the things that we're trying to do and that working with the consultant on. And just like the first round of work we're doing with the first workshop, this second workshop will have climate ambassador and other people that are interested sort of outreach going on beyond just the workshop. So if you can't make it to the workshop or if there's people that have groups they want to take things to, we'll have opportunities for that too. So that's my addition to that. But July 31st is the date for the next big community meeting.
Questions, comments? Anybody? Anything to say? Thanks, guys. That was my question. When's the next one? Because I keep getting asked, so now I have an answer.
Yeah. Since you mentioned more about community engagement, and I won't go into all the details, but I had a long chat with Kate about it, last week about the student involvement in the in Portsmouth, so Portsmouth High School. Does anybody know exactly what's going on in terms of the schools engaging the high school students or the community engaging high school students? Because you talked about education, this gentleman here, right? Education and awareness. We all know that starts with kids. I went to Portsmouth High School because it's my alma mater. I mean, I'm from Portsmouth, born and raised here. I don't live here regularly now. My dad's here, family's here. Went to talk to principal who is no longer Mary Lyons, who I thought was Mary Lyons, but I ran into one of the teachers doing, it was really haphazard, but really cool, doing this amazing like stewardship work on the school grounds with a bunch of students. And so I said, oh my gosh, I came here to talk to, principal who I knew, I used to coach OM with, Mary Lyons, and here you guys are doing this stuff that I was going to talk to her about, which is a Student Conservation Association. And I was actually here for my 25th reunion with my old crew from 1998, actually. So I don't know a lot about what's going on now in the schools, and I just thought I'm trying to figure out if SCA is still involved in Portsmouth. And if anybody's heard of it, it's doing stuff, the organization is actually doing work in Portsmouth. I think that's a wonderful portal. Are you teaching?
Yeah.
Board rep here.
Oh, wonderful.
So we have our student reps from the high school also happen to be on the Seacoast Students for Sustainability. So we are partnered with all of our neighboring towns on that. And they've been very successful. But Jess and I are working on putting a proposal together for the superintendent to address exactly what you're talking about. And I know it's been a hot topic with Christina, is like healthy habits start early and education starts early. And it's definitely something that's on the mind, but it always gets pushed to the back burner. And I think the interest from all is how do we get it front and center, but how do we also give the teachers in the schools the tools to build out? As you probably remember, environmental sustainability is like the big culminating project of 5th grade here across the district. So they all do their environmental school, but
It wasn't when I was.
oh, it wasn't. Okay,
No.
so it
not in
is.
school.
It is.
Not
So
always.
we've got a couple of linchpins that we're holding on to, but to be perfectly honest, there is no curriculum for it. There is no build out. And there's a lot of partnerships that we're talking about. Like, for example, the high school students have written some lovely lesson plans. We now have gardens at all of our schools. The ability to partner is there. We just need to push it over the hill. So there's a lot in the works, but
So it's really
Not
funny,
yet.
is like the gardens are at the schools, right? But this teacher was just pulling her hair out while she's pulling weeds.
Yeah.
She's just like, no one's
volunteering.
no one's volunteering to do it. And
Yep.
I said, oh man, there is this great organization, Student Conservation Association.
Yeah.
They send crews out locally throughout the state of New Hampshire and then throughout the country to remote regions, do these great projects. And students have to get like passionate, excited about it, right? They're not going if there's not something there for them to grab onto.
Right.
So I just would love to make that connection, because we just had a whole big, we did this reunion and we gave it to the student. It's a national organization, so we gave them our social media stuff and they're, amping it up. And I said, we just had this in Portsmouth. So they're going to, and I thought, well, maybe there's a way to take that good energy and just get it to the schools.
I'd love the contact for, and we can tell,
Yes,
I can't speak for the administrative team. It's not surprising that I'm the school board rep here, because it's something that I care a lot about and have really pushed for years to get us to be more front and center. And we're making small steps. I mean, we had we have 40 volunteers from our schools for Earth Day. That's huge for, for Day of Climate Action. So the seed is there, and now we finally have the interest, and now COVID's behind us. So there is some thoughtfulness around how do we seamlessly educate. But I love the conservation.
Change their contact with you.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that'd be great.
And just to build off what Margot said, there is an outdoor educator for all 3 Portsmouth elementary schools. And she has done outdoor ambassadors with a lot of from my understanding, a lot of the teachers at all the elementary schools, with a focus on getting kids out and making that part of the curriculum at least once a week. We have a really wonderful middle school teacher, science teacher, who does a lot of great projects with kids who have presented here. And typically we have high
first meeting.
school eco student kids as part of our committee. They're actually going to be written in as
Within this.
Yeah,
It's like
the first
they're
meeting in a
just
long
time that
yeah, we're just in,
Summertime.
yeah,
This summer?
No, it's.
No,
they've been here for years.
Oh, and
Years,
summertime,
yeah.
so they're like. they've got-
Right, so the
Yeah.
members are graduating, and so in the fall, we'll be getting new eco club members here who will participate. They are typically very involved and very active, so we do have those pieces. And I actually just met a new English teacher who talked about wanting to do stewardship and be involved in the sustainability fair and all kinds of things. So there are definitely, like Margot said, there's lots of seeds out there.
Yeah.
Just-
No, Katie Fitzgerald. Anyway, one of the teachers, if you talk to an English teacher,
She-
so did I.
she's brand new. She hasn't even started.
Oh,
She'll
okay.
start in the fall. Yep.
Different one.
So, yeah,
Great English teacher.
yeah. So as Margot said, it feels like there are lots of pieces out there. It's just figuring out a way to put them together better. And,
Yeah.
and personally, having 2 kids about to start the schools, I am very motivated to make sure that it's,
I gotta
Yeah.
say, coming back to this is the most time I've spent in at one time. I'm here for other reasons, family and otherwise, in this city since I had to leave for my, school on the West Coast and 25 years ago. And I will say though, that I think for kids, I was a student in the public school system here, right? And I even taught in the public schools when I was at UNH as a substitute teacher. And I think that students going around the city today, they have to see that the city has got that kind of presence, if you know what I mean. And that's what this group is about, right? That's what is happening. But what we see is this constant battle of massive development and all of the, commercial stuff going on and trees. I mean, I'll bring it up again here, trees getting chopped down and that kind of stuff. And so I think for students, if I were a student in the city today, then, versus what it was, I would look around and see what's really going on around me. And is there going to be enough energy behind me getting involved? What is the city, what example are we setting as a city for the students to give them a path?
Mhm.
So that's just my general comment.
We planted
Mhm.
400 trees this year.
I hope so. I heard that they're at the DPW in a warehouse and they're not totally doing
Oh, they planted
well.
them out.
Did they get them out?
Yeah.
They're alive, they're.
Dozens around my.
Yeah.
door,
Yeah.
Here.
In the ground.
anybody else have anything to say about? Okay, so moving on to the greenhouse gas inventory update, that you, John, or Kate, or?
Sure. Do you want me to tackle it?
Sure, I can help out along the way.
I just need to be admitted to the Zoom session. Yes.
Did you,
You have to ask.
Sign in?
to be admitted.
Yeah, I've been in the waiting room for
oh, I don't
a while.
see you.
All night.
Sure.
You in the right one?
That's what it says.
That was
It
weird.
usually pops up.
Yeah,
City of
should be
Portsmouth
okay.
Zoom rating room, welcome. That's what I have.
This is the right one.
That should be the right one.
Doesn't want you in there.
Very strange. Yes, today.
Well, you can.
Okay,
You want to log back out, log back in? Is that easier?
Where
sure.
else are missing? Or you can invite it.
Maybe it timed out.
I've been looking, I didn't see anybody come up. If you click the little arrow to sign participants, does it change anything? Thing?
Or can you send me an invitation? That might be.
It says invite down at the bottom. It
Oh,
might-
maybe.
it
Yeah.
might-
I don't know. We logged into someone's email on here.
Oh, no, probably not. I don't know if that'll work.
And the link on the city website didn't work?
Can you just say it verbally? Do you have a?
Sure,
thumb drive?
I'll do it verbally. I was gonna show everybody what we've got, but we can do it verbally. Kate, check me if I get anything wrong. So, yeah, we actually walked the CAP consultants, Garrison and Dawn, through the current state of greenhouse gas. So just quick recap. We settled on a platform from UNH Sustainability Institute called SciMap, almost 2 years ago now. And Kate and I, primarily Kate, been doing a yeoman's job of collecting data from around the city. That's job one. Getting the data converted into a format that the system can consume. That's job two. And then actually getting it into the platform. So outstanding work, Kate. If anyone in the room are data wonks and you like working with data, we could definitely use some volunteers. It's an explicit ask. It's a bit of a lift. But where we are right now is, so what SciMap does in any good GHG platform is it takes all the calculations from Kyoto and from Paris and from the GHG Accords itself. And it gives you an ability to take what you're consuming for energy of various types and convert it into greenhouse gas equivalents. So things are measured in scopes, and basically what we've got now for calendar year 21. So we're sort of doing this crawl, walk, run style. We have all of the scope 1 data for the city. So that means stationary fuel, propane, oil, stuff that's stored in a tank to generally heat buildings. We've got transportation fuel, and we have them all tagged by city department. So we can actually break down who's using what types of fuel. That's all scope 1. Scope 1 is the stationary fuel. Scope 2 is purchased electricity. We have all of that, I believe, for all of the city organizations. So net, we have, I think, a pretty good snapshot of what calendar 21 looked like for the organizations that make up the city of Portsmouth. And then once the data is in, and this is what I'd be happy to show anyone who wants to see it afterwards, or it's turn my screen on. There's all kinds of graphing and charting needed, but the gist of it is SciMap takes the transactional data. How many gallons of gas was it? How many gallons of diesel was it? How many therms of natural gas did you buy in such and such a month? It takes all that stuff and it converts it into CO2 equivalents. So it tracks what the carbon dioxide is, what the methane is, which is 34 times as impactful as the same amount of carbon dioxide, and the nitrous dioxide, which is 300 times as impactful as the same amount of carbon dioxide. We have that data now for the energy purchases that are being made by the city. So that's done for 21. The consultants have it. Kate, have they had a chance to get in yet? I know they only just saw it last week for the first time.
I know they have access to it. And I think that's their plan, is to really get into it before the workshop number 2 and
Good.
get like a presentation,
Yep,
a mini
yep.
presentation together to give us the basics.
Yeah, we gave them kind of a 10,000 foot, 900 mile an hour flyby last week. So when they elect it all, hopefully they'll come back to us and we'll give them some stick time and actually get them using the data. In the meantime, we plan to replicate what we did for 21 in 22. Now we know what data we need. We know where the rocks are under the water. That's where we could use the help. But once we get that and we get that going forward, we'll be able to do quarter over quarter and year over year comparisons for the city. So that in a nutshell is what I was going to show. And the other thing, Kate, you and I talked about this a little bit. So that's city data. We can impact that. I mean, we can impact how many gallons of gas or how many kilowatt hours of power are being purchased by DPW or police or school. There are also other data that are sort of, we've talked about the ring of the ring of here's the city, here are the businesses in the city, and here are the citizens, the residents that reside in the city. Obviously, we don't directly impact those latter two, but it's good to at least know what's going on. So we did get some data, like estimated data from Rockingham County on vehicle miles traveled, and that gets extrapolated into, into carbon dioxide. That kind of data is a lot less useful, in my opinion, for our purposes, because we don't impact it. We can know about it and be aware of it, but it's not like we can, reduce the number of cars that fly by 95
John,
by fiat.
what about with community power? And people
Yeah.
switching to cleaner energy,
good-
wouldn't
Yes.
that show a big impact in the community?
We haven't seen the impact yet, but we have the ability
Oh.
to track it. So what SIMAP will let us do.
That's
is-
why I thought
yeah.
having a baseline. but-
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And as we get more of the data, so I mentioned that scope 2 is primarily consumed electricity. It's not burn fuel, it's electricity. Electricity that's purchased from a traditional utility is looked at in one way. Power that's actually purchased from a green source is looked at a different way. So we will actually get credit as a municipality for buying greener electricity as we track it. We just need the data.
So for the cap,
Yep.
I understand we have the city piece from the city departments that you've put together, which is great. And I love that you'll have it set to go next year,
Mhm.
because that's the
As
whole
long as we get those
idea.
volunteers I asked for.
Yeah.
Did I mention
Yeah.
we're looking for
Yeah.
volunteers?
But the community piece is the bulk of our greenhouse gas in the city.
Yep.
So what is the cap gonna do for that?
Well, that's what the cap is all about. It's about sort of raising awareness about these numbers, both.
No,
the
I mean,
city-
how are they gonna, they're gonna get the numbers to
Oh,
report the
yeah, the
greenhouse
numbers
gas
are both
emissions?
the municipality and the community. So
Yeah,
they're
okay.
both part of the inventory. The 2018 inventory has them both. The 2012, 2006, they all do. They break out the
Well,
community and the municipality.
Yeah, the most recent one was 2018, came out in 2019, but we'll have another one.
2021 is the one they're working on right now.
Great.
And so that's the
Okay.
one that the cap consultant will use in looking at what the community impact is. And I think they're gonna have the data they need. I don't know where they're gonna be with 21, but
Same community data that the 2018 one had, so it should show similar ratios.
So is there a data visualization aspect to this part of it? And I'm asking because.
Boy, I
I
wish I
actually-
could get into the Zoom meeting right now.
Well-
Yeah, yes, there is.
Well, I worked for the Sustainability Institute. I worked with Jen Andrews.
Did you? Yeah,
and-
okay.
And
Yep.
used SciMap to, I was planning out a dashboard.
Yep.
That would be used to show all this information. So I'm just wondering if that's kind of how it will be shown.
I'll leave it running on my screen. I'm sorry, I can't actually put it up on the put it up on the board where everyone can see it, but yeah, it's SciMap has a nice set of visualization
Yeah.
and reporting stuff built into it.
So you're going to use the.
Yeah,
SciMap.
so for those of you who can see the little screen, this is what 2021 looks like. It's very impressive from a distance. You can see a pie chart with colors.
Yeah.
Sorry.
As a fellow data nerd, I feel like there needs to be a little bit of background on data clarity and validity. So when you're looking at the municipality, we have very direct data sources,
Transactional.
transactional
Yeah.
data sources. We know how much diesel came out of tanks. We know exact electricity bills.
Mhm.
When you go to the community, one of the problems, and I think one of the things that John was trying to get at is when we say we can't impact those numbers, we know that we're making impacts, but you can't measure them because the type of data that we're using is not specific to Portsmouth. Rockingham transportation data.
some of it is.
Some of it
Some of
is,
it-
some of it
Like,
is,
yeah,
yeah.
but
Electricity data certainly is.
that is a thing to understand when we're looking at, if the cap comes out and says this action is going to have this impact, that is not necessarily going to reflect in the greenhouse gas inventory because our uncertainties are so large in the type of data. There's a lot that can be done on that. Community power is naturally going to have a lot on that because it's going to give us more information about things like utilities are notoriously bad at sharing this information and they don't have any requirement to, so we can ask them all day and that doesn't.
But that's
mean-
one of the things community power has done.
Right,
it's
and so-
increased that ability. Yeah.
Yeah, so, but I guess my point is that as the data gets better, the numbers don't always go down. It's my
Right.
warning,
Right.
because the original numbers weren't necessarily accurate. So when we're talking about like setting a benchmark, I think we just need to be careful about the language.
Mhm.
Because setting a benchmark today on the data that we have today, some of which is, we have to extrapolate, there's no other way to know.
Mhm.
And comparing the 3 years when we have information from community power and we have these specific data sources, I just think that however, whether it's a dashboard or whatever we're doing, we just need to be careful about being clear about how we can measure these things so that we don't fall into a situation where people are like, well, the cap said if we
Yeah.
did all these things,
Right.
it should go down.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, the challenge of graphs, completely agree with Tori.
Yeah,
And-
I know, it's been a while since I looked at the Portsmouth 2018 greenhouse gas inventory, but I did recently look at the one for the city of Concord, New Hampshire. And if it's a year later, I believe, 2019. But it's just the quality of the Concord one. If we could aim to do more than what we have in the 2018, I understand it was done with help from UNH and I don't know the arrangements. But I'm hoping in the cap, our baseline, new baseline numbers could be better than what we had in 2018. And it's no criticism of anyone here or anyone involved in that.
What do you mean by better? Like,
More
how is it-
specific, more detailed. The community section in the 2018 report is pretty vague and even hard to follow.
Yeah.
The writing.
That's kind of what I was getting
I'm
at with the
sorry
data.
to be
We
blunt.
just- it's-
No, that's.
The data doesn't
Yeah,
exist.
I really want to see
Yeah.
a better product. That's
Yeah.
why I'm disclosing this.
Yeah, so having, agree with you both violently, and that we actually discussed this back at the
Violently.
beginning, and nothing has changed except now Kate and I have spent a lot of time with our elbows in the data. So my recommendation, what I'm feeling more comfortable with is we can tell a very definitive transactional narrative about an entity called the city of Portsmouth. Now, it is true that Portsmouth's GHG footprint is a relatively small percentage of the total area. That's true. I personally have decided that's not relevant. Because that's a story that we can tell because we have that transactional data. As we said, we know exactly how many gallons or kilowatt hours our tax money is spending. We know what that is. We will know it year over year, and people in this room have the ability to influence how that gets spent. So we can tell that very detailed, transactional, defensible, year over year story about the city. And I think we should, in part because we need to start somewhere, but also I think it enables us to tell the larger story. So as the businesses of the communities, when they hear, okay, this is what the city had in 2021, we're talking about the data we have now. And then when we see what we have in 2022 and they know what we're measuring, oh, wow, look at the impact such and such a change made. Now, will that translate into the same percentage of impact in the community or in the business community? We can't know. It's not that we don't know, we can't know. But what we can do is we can tell that story, including influencing the changes, the decreases in the CO2e and what we did to make it happen. And frankly, hopefully, not this is made up. We can get some ownership because again, we all own the entity that we're talking about. We are all shareholders in this.
I
city of
think
Portsmouth.
Aubrey's been waiting and I do want to say something else to reply.
Okay,
Well, I'm just wondering, because I love this conversation about the nuances of the data, and like you said, the utilities would be a great place to start, at least for electric and natural gas and all that. But I wonder, I mean, this seems like a conversation that needs to happen with the state and maybe state legislation, but when I think of transportation, every single person that has a car in New Hampshire has to get it inspected every year. That inspection has the make of the vehicle. It has how many miles it is at that point. Presumably they have the data of what the miles were the last year and the year before and the year before. So it seems like that metadata is somewhere. If we actually wanted to be like, okay, this is the breakdown of vehicles that are registered in Portsmouth, New Hampshire. This is how many miles they did for each vehicle type. And there would be a way to get a lot more nuanced data out of it. It wouldn't be perfect, because it all depends on how fast you're driving and what have you, but it'd be a lot better than like, this is the Rockingham County breakdown of what the fleet of people is, things like that. So I wonder if there's some way at the state level to say, okay, the state needs to start tracking this and giving it to towns. The state needs to require the utilities to give that information to towns as well. As if we're going to take this seriously, it's all about the data and tracking. And I've said it before, you can only change what you can measure. And if we don't have the data, then we can't measure it.
So fair enough, Aubrey, just a quick touch. Could we get the data? Yes. But in particular on the transportation data, I personally wonder about the value in doing that. Because I could register my car in New Hampshire, which I do. And I can report what the odometer mileage is from last year, which is easy to get. But there's no way to know whether I put that CO2e into the air in New Hampshire or in Florida. There just literally is no way to know. So that's all.
True, and I guess that's how you're tracking it is like, I mean, does it matter where you're putting it in? I mean, you as a resident here are responsible for that, so it's effectively coming out of, you know, your
Right,
house.
right.
That's true, but what I'm suggesting is that's not, I don't think that's a greenhouse gas inventory.
Well, I think it is, because
It
if
is?
business travel, I mean, it's the same for if, I mean, they don't, but if our city vehicles went down to Mass every day and back,
Right.
it would be the same tracking.
Or if you
Doesn't
track
matter
your-
where it's
or if you
released.
track your
It's
data.
It's the owned entity is how the scoping
Yep.
is, right? It's
It's
the
what you
entity
decided
that
is. It's really
you
your
define.
definition.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I
and
know Effie wanted to say something and then Counselor Cook as
Yeah,
well, so.
I was just gonna say, I understand what you're saying about the city and having it be trackable and traceable, so it's all there, and I get that. But what I'm really looking at is the climate action plan, and what we talked about is having a good baseline to go forward so that in future years we could compare back to it. And I understand there are big chunks we won't be able to get at, like Pease, like the Port Authority with ships coming and going, like I-95 zooming through. But still, we could do a better job on businesses and homes within Portsmouth. And I don't mean to say that Concord, New Hampshire is the be all and end all. I just thought, wow, you know, comparing it to Portsmouth's last report, there was a lot more specificity and
Oh, yeah, no.
sources.
Yeah, I
So
understand. I'm
that's
not,
all.
I'm not
Yeah.
disagreeing. I'm just trying to separate in everyone's mind the sort of the rings of the onion.
And well, I think it's a very important
Yeah.
point, and I think everybody here is clear that the city was like, was it 3% of the
2%.
greenhouse gas emissions in the last report compared to the community, meaning businesses and households, manufacturing being 97 or whatever percent. So that's why I'm really more interested in the 97. I think it's great to have the city piece, and I think that has some other purposes it could be used for as well.
Counselor Cook?
I just wanted to say, I love the idea of getting the state to actually give us those numbers and track them somehow. But it gets us one step closer to a carbon tax on individuals and households. But that also means that it's very, very unlikely the state will ever do that and track those data unless we put a lot of pressure on elected officials to do so, or we do a lot of work electing new officials to do it.
Yeah, I think there's a parallel to draw here of our state does not have things like a climate action plan. And at the same time, we have one of the top sustainability institutes at our state-funded university. So that can give you a picture as to how many hurdles there are between our abilities and what gets done in the state house or what they will even entertain, unfortunately, right? I mean, because yeah, the data, like, right, the data does exist somewhere. Some of it truly isn't disclosed in a manner that makes sense. I think community power and some conversations we're having about energy disclosures are a huge part of this too. It's a many piece puzzle.
I'm curious, do you think Bright Action can have, I mean, I know we only have 50 households signed up, but as people sign up and start to take action from where they're starting and as they make change, can we get data to see reflections of any of that
It's not
stuff?
really meant or made to do that. You know, Bill Lyons, I think, described it as a dotted line connection.
Yeah.
So that if we had a great number of households in Portsmouth, we might see some decreases, but to draw lines and say it's because of this that this carbon reduction happened, the tool isn't made for that.
So even
And
with the
it's gonna-
people participating, you wouldn't see like collectively
well,
these
you-
250 houses went
So you-
from this.
Yeah. And you as a
GHG.
household.
Right, I know I
participating,
will.
Your individual and for our
Right.
group, we can see how much we're saving and it's all estimated.
Right.
Right. And those are also not representative households. You know, those are all early adopters that are obviously very into it, you know. That's
Right,
not
I know that's a very
that's society.
select, but if it grows, there
Right.
could be
Those can
the,
be helpful to understand trends, like
Mhm.
that kind of data is helpful, even how many EV chargers there are in a city and how often they're populated. But you can't extrapolate data from it. So it can help you look at the data and say, we think this is inaccurate because essentially, which is a helpful thing. And in greenhouse gas inventories, there are narratives, and that is why, because the data does not tell the whole story. You have to do a certain amount of understanding of
Right.
what you're looking at. So those things can be helpful in that, but it's not going to get you the actual data. It's just going
And
to
I-
give you perspective.
I think
It's really
it's
helpful
simple.
at the
Peter.
household level where you have
Mhm.
individual people seeing what the impact of what they do is, just like
Right,
John's saying, at the
right.
city level, the individual impact, we have the good data for that. But I would argue that we need to keep working on the community data because it is so important that people see that. If we want to be, I mean, mostly these are communication tools. They're really not data tools, like a data climate model or something like that. They're communication tools to show people where we are and where we're going. And I would argue that doing a greenhouse gas inventory every year is not going to benefit us in a huge way. It's every 5 years or so that you're going to really see a trend shift. You're not going to see it every year in this amount of data, especially with the quality data we have now. Some communities have taken it further and done much more on their greenhouse gas inventories. The one advantage of doing it every year is you're on top of it. You have a staff of several people that work on it and they collect data in a better way. Like in Portland, I think they're using Google Maps and Waze to get people's driving trend data, and they can somehow input that data. I really like the idea of getting the car registration, because even if it's not going to get you the people that are using it here, it's getting a same set of quality data of the same set of people that live in the city.
right.
So you're comparing at least that trend, and is that trend going down? So it's just a conversation about
Maybe.
how
some
you
of that's
communicate the
narrative.
information.
Mhm.
Yeah, and continue to communicate it. And like you said, it's really about the cap, and we're doing it so we can raise awareness about the need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and what's in the cap. How can we strengthen the cap to do that better?
John?
And I just want to emphasize two things that I just heard from both of you, which is that it's about the narrative, right? I think
Yeah.
we have to have faith that if we put together the right narrative supported by whatever we can plug in to support it, as individuals who either run homes or run businesses, as they consume this stuff, assuming that they care, then they can think about, well, what actions can I take? Will we ever be able to completely precisely manage and measure and manage and compare? No, we won't. But again, I think it's a narrative. You're right, Peter. It's not a modeling tool. And that's why as a career data person, I'm very averse to showing pie charts unless I know exactly where the data came from, because people will assume whatever you know.
That's how you
But-
lose your job real
Exactly. But
fast.
but if we're telling a story and telling it in such a way that people say, I could do such and such. That's progress. We might not always be able to measure it,
Mhm.
but there's a pretty good chance we're at least going to be helping to make it happen. That I think that I agree with both of you. That's a big part of what's going to come out of the cap is a big part of the narrative.
All right, we have one topic unless there's other business, so Tori or, oh, okay, I'm
I
sorry.
have something else too, but we can go with green buildings first.
Okay, I'm sorry, so just please consider that Counselor Cook wants a few minutes.
Yes, or what time do we end?
8:30.
Oh,
We got a
okay.
little bit
This
of
whole
time.
time I thought we ended at 8 and I was like,
Nope.
whoa. Green buildings, working group, green buildings and infrastructure. Bigger umbrella. So we've been making some progress on a couple things. First off is we had drafted a municipal green building and infrastructure policy. So this would be just for city related projects, essentially things in the CIP and city buildings. And team kind of got a version that we liked. We brought it to DPW because being the people who will be implementing most of it, that opinion is important. got some comments back actually today. We're able to work through some of those comments, modify the version that we had in a way that hopefully is received more friendly. And then Peter is going to have an additional conversation with them. And our hope is that after that conversation, we can have a draft that feels near completion to be able to bring to this committee so that everyone can look over it, have an understanding of the types of things that we're trying to get in it, and that we would be able to take that policy to a vote here to be brought to the city manager. Right now, our thought process is that we will try to do this as an internal policy. In the end, that will be up to the city manager. But right now, the avenue we're hoping for is that we would bring it to the city manager. It would be an internal policy by the city manager. That could be a little bit more quickly enacted. There is always the chance that the city manager will want it to be a city council policy, in which case we'll go through the kind of avenues of that. And Peter can speak way more to that process than I know. But yeah, so that's that part, and that's exciting. And kind of as a preview to that, one of the, obviously we wanted to do this to make sure we have this type of policy. We all know that a lot of the buildings and a lot of things that Portsmouth has already been doing falls under a lot of the things that are already in this policy, but this is an actual way written on paper to point us to that as decisions and CIP things are going. And also because the city will have this as we move forward and look at things like green building codes or energy disclosures or aid programs for energy efficiency for residents, the city can already point to that municipality is doing their part. And hopefully some of those lessons too, before it goes kind of more community broad. So that's very exciting. And then on the other side, we've got, there's other things as well. So we're looking, Shanti, the building inspector, we've had a couple of conversations with him and his interest on possibilities of green building codes, likely optional to start, but at least getting language in there. There actually is already a section now, at least for green building in the code, which he already put in there. So helping him in that process of figuring out what types of things and what types of code language make sense for our city and achieve the goals and are functional from a inspector standpoint and what we're capable of doing with city staffing. So we've got that going on. We've got conversations on that realm, kind of energy disclosure and energy efficiency in the city, and how do we look at that to help not just green buildings and impact, but things like greenhouse gas inventory and even municipal, just a bit more understanding of where all these things are coming from. And Councillor Cook has been working a little bit on, there's a mechanism, a trust, please correct me if I really mess this up, and we're figuring out the legal entity, and this trust would act as a way to help with energy efficiency projects for Portsmouth homeowners, especially homeowners who need help with their residents. So and mechanisms of any funding from this green building work in the future, hopefully helping fund that in some ways, so that it's not just a draw on the city and it's not a constant ask, but it's its own entity. So yeah, lots of things going on. But next meeting we'll provide the draft, hopefully not an early draft, hopefully draft number. I don't even know at this point. It's for everyone to look at. And be able to take a vote on it to bring it to the city manager. That's so exciting.
Aubrey, do you have anything else?
I think already covered it perfectly.
Anybody else have anything? Thank you both for all your work on this. It's awesome. Councillor Cook?
Last but not least, the governance committee discussed the draft sustainability ordinance that Councilor Denton presented to council and asked for the review. So we did have a few questions for the committee. Most of the questions are around how you want to structure appointments, initial appointments. So in reappointing, we have to give instructions. So for the mayor in making the appointments, and you can just kind of tack these on at the end. They aren't actually part of the ordinance, but it's like special instructions for how you implement the ordinance once you adopt it. And so if we tell the mayor to reappoint everyone who's sitting, which I think was the goal in the language, the question is then what terms do you want people appointed for? Because you don't want to appoint everyone and say everyone has a 3-year term, that everyone rotates off at the exact same time. And then suddenly you're making decisions about who gets reappointed. So how do you want to stagger the terms and who should be slotted into which terms? And the reason this is an important question is that the mayor won't be appointing new people until you get down to a certain number. So those people that have the shortest terms, the 1-year terms, will be off the committee for a while, waiting. And so that's key to know.
To clarify,
So-
as a voting member, they'll be off the committee.
As a voting member, they can still come, they
Right.
can, right, anybody can attend from the public. And
You
the
can't
way this,
automatically reappoint somebody? It has
You-
to be over a certain time?
you can, the problem is right now, the committee doesn't really have terms at all. And so when you go into kind of this ordinance format, people have 3-year terms and then they can be reappointed. But we're trying to go down, my understanding is reduce the number on the committee to a much lower number than we have now. So once we hit 9 to 11 members, then the mayor will be able to appoint. But until we get to that point, there are no appointments.
Right, got it.
So that means people who have a 1-year term will be waiting for a while, and people who have a 2-year term will probably be waiting for a little bit, or we might actually have a few that get appointed at that stage. And then
This
the
only
3-year term
applies-
people will rotate off and then,
Yeah.
So you see what I'm saying?
This only applies to those seats that are not designated. So we'll always
Yes.
have like the students.
You'll always have the
Right, okay.
students, you'll always have a
Counselor.
counselor, a
Right.
school board rep,
Okay.
your city staff. You just, it's the people who are appointed.
Okay.
In the standard fashion for a committee, like our volunteers.
How many people do we officially have on the committee now that are not those special people? I don't even know,
What did
honestly.
we say? Was it like 18 total?
It's a large number.
It's a large number.
Huh.
Yeah, it's a really large committee. So it might take a little while for people to kind of rotate off. So the committee needs to make a decision on what do you want that to look like as far as that appointment structure, because governance didn't have other major suggestions, and the governance committee was pretty happy, and so was legal with the language. The only other question they had was,
How do we do it?
because the council's currently considering changes to the administrative ordinance that require committees to appoint a chair annually in January. The language around how you appoint the chair and how the chair is chosen would have to be done, yeah. But we would assume that this committee is going to elect the chair that they want, the same chair that the committee has been electing. So that's pretty common. People continue to serve. So that's the only other real question we had. And when you're thinking about the way you want to slot people into terms, think about who here really wants to stay on the committee for a very long period of time. Because if you want to stay for a long period of time, then you probably really want one of those 3-year, you want the 3-year term, not the 2-year or the 1-year, because you want to be in a situation where you're just reappointed after 3 years. So that's the thinking.
My thoughts on this are a couple.
Mhm.
One, it seems like, on one hand, we could just, all draw straws, who gets 1, 2, or 3. But on the other hand, I would want to see, like, we have numerous areas of expertise on here and people that are focused on different things. So it wouldn't be like we want everybody who's into transportation, they all ended up with a 1-year slot, and then we don't have anybody that's focused on transportation. So we kind of need to somehow balance out those two factors, I think, to make sure that, somebody with whatever expertise has both short and long, if there's multiple people with that.
So one thought they had is for the next meeting, we could request from the city clerk all the current members' applications. So we could have them in front of us. We could, hate to say, put them in order. But say like, are some people who are willing to do a 1-year term versus a 3-year term and start sorting it that way? And then maybe go by descending order, like people who have been on the committee for the longest amount of time. I'm not sure if we're going to want to give them the shortest amount of time or give them the longest slot, but come up with some system.
Mhm.
I think we should start with a list of a stack of the original applications that were submitted to the city clerk.
I mean, I think that is definitely the logical way to do it. I would just pitch that maybe that is an activity that we have a set group to do and can reach out to people. I just think that that's a hard group consensus thing. I think it's gonna be, people are gonna be like, oh, I kind of want to ditch out here, but I don't want to be the person to be like, oh, put me on 1 year, like, I think it would maybe easier if it was, maybe the standing members who aren't even a part of this conversation can help facilitate that. And there's like, maybe can put out a draft or shoot out an email, hey, you're in this group because some guidelines we decided you had expertise or you have tenure, or you attend a lot. If this doesn't apply, let us know, and I think that would be a good task for like a smaller group than like everyone trying to, not that I think that anyone here is going to be particularly feisty about it, but I just think that it could be a long process if we let it be.
Yeah, I definitely think it's a longer discussion. Is there any way, not to put it off, but to put it off, like, can we defer it for a time, like become an official committee with our members and say, like within this certain amount of time, we will get down to these numbers. So maybe we can have a little more time to think through the process and give people an opportunity to,
Yes.
like, can everybody start with maybe a 2-year and then from after those 2 years, we start doing 1 years and 3-year or whatever?
You can take the approach that you appoint everyone for a 3-year term.
Mhm.
But that means for 3 years, you're gonna be the size and the committee, then the mayor won't appoint anyone.
No.
Until you hit,
Right.
no one can be appointed really for the next 3 years unless you somehow drop below 9 to 11 people, which you might have enough people leave that you drop down. So you could take that approach. The challenge then is balancing terms. And this is what governance committee has been dealing with for 1.5 years, is committees that have off balanced terms. And we're like parking, traffic and safety, I always use as the example because all 5 permanent members rotate off the exact same time. So that means that you lose all that expertise if they don't come back. And that's the last thing that you want. You want to make sure you have kind of like this healthy rotation of expertise and knowledge. So that's the concern I always have
Mhm.
around that.
Yep.
You could say all people are reappointed. And then as the mayor appoints, the mayor should appoint to create a stagger. So you could say everybody's appointed for 3 years. And then once we drop below, I think it's currently the instructions 11 or something, 9 to 11 members. Then the mayor should appoint to create a stagger and you can define what that is. The new members are appointed for 1 year, the first, so we could go through that process of setting this up. And
I would think we'd want to do that in some sense, no matter what method we took for the original appointment, right? We wanted the language where when somebody is appointed, the mayor should be able to look at that, or the governance committee should be able to look at that and say, we've got a lot of 1-year people, you get 2, or you
That's
get
the-
3, and should be able to fill those blanks either way. So I think that language needs to exist no matter what we do about the first grouping of us. Do
Yeah,
we
we
have
can-
an official attendance list? No, right?
I think somewhere, yeah, there's an
Yeah.
official list of.
Doing all the minutes.
No.
there is an official list. The clerk has an official list of who's on the committee.
Well, I mean, attendance of meetings.
That'd probably be
That
fun.
would have
In the
been an
minutes.
easy way
In
to
the
at least get
minutes.
some
Yeah.
big chunks
Have
of,
to go back and
and look through the minutes. Yeah.
But people are technically here until they resign.
Right.
Officially, they send the letter of resignation. Or if they've moved and they didn't do that, ultimately, the mayor can reach out to them and verify that they are no longer. on the
Can we
committee.
send out a first email? Of just, hey, we're
Yeah.
going through a restructuring. If you're not active in this. We, like, the numbers are now matter. Can you please, like, here's an address, no one's gonna judge you. Can you please, like, let us know? And at least then we'll have a number of like,
Our
actually.
current email distribution list has people on who haven't been on the committee for quite some time.
Some people have, just in defense of some of the people, I guess, have asked to stay on the list even though they don't.
Okay,
wanna be on
that's
the
fair. It's more than fair.
So it's more of an informational thing
So-
too, also.
So I'd like to make a suggestion because of time. I like the idea, Josh, of getting, if you're willing to.
Sure.
Get the official list, bring it in next time. And I think it's going to be easier than we think. There's a lot of people who I've even emailed if you would resign. So there might not be that many people on. And then for those of us who are here, I like the idea of keeping as much expertise and knowledge in the group. And some of us are getting so old that we don't want to be on for too long. So I think if we could work it out next week if people are agreed with that.
And I have one other suggestion on the ordinance as well. The effective date. If I would personally recommend, and we've never had an ordinance that has upon adoption of something.
Yeah.
Oh, have we? Oh, well, they told me, legal told me that we hadn't. So that's interesting. So, but I would recommend that you make the effective date like January 1. And so that the mayor can take the actions to reappoint the people, the instructions, the actions to reappoint everyone here. And so that this committee is in place January 1st. Even if you haven't, the committee hasn't finished its work and adopted the climate action plan yet. The reason I'm making that recommendation is that you can pass this and the climate action plan is not adopted and say that then you have a council that's not really, I don't think this will happen, but you have a council that's not receptive to climate action plan, decides not to adopt it. And then suddenly the committee just stays the way it is. And so I would consider adopting it for a January 1st date.
Somebody's gotta think of the options. but-
Yeah, I was like,
That's normally my job at work, so I love this.
Sorry.
Actually, but if.
it's possible, it's not likely, but it's possible. I try to always like guard yourself against the possibilities.
Yeah, we've had
Yeah.
some pretty big swings before.
Yeah.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Anybody have anything else?
Okay, do we need a motion for that? To
No, we can keep
adopt in
discussing.
January?
Yeah, we can
Yeah.
keep discussing this, and so that you guys have some instructions to send me back with,
Okay,
and then I can take them back whenever. I would say probably the latest you probably want these back is August, because you need time for 3 readings.
So if we can plan to have it figured out by the end of next meeting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
It-
We can do that.
yeah.
We'll noodle on it.
I'm gonna ask for somebody to suggest that we adjourn and then we can do takeaways after that, if that works for everybody, and then we can stop the recording. So
a question. I have the schedule for who the facilitator and recorder is, but it's not what we're doing. So I just wanted to check in.
I think Eco
been
Club
taking
was
notes this whole
supposed to be here.
Yeah, you're taking notes now, right?
Yes.
I have
Okay,
to miss
just
the
making
next
sure.
meeting, so if it's me, I can't do it.
Well, usually who
Yes.
facilitates
For
takes
my
notes
credit.
next,
Oh, I
right?
see. So it's,
So I will take notes. I think I facilitated because it would have been Eco Club and they are not
Right.
here. So
Summer.
I don't know who
so does anyone know
facilitates.
who the next facilitator is?
I thought it was the other way around. I thought the note taker became the facilitator.
Facility.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
that's fine. I don't
That
need to
would-
take notes.
You're doing a
Yeah.
bonus anyway.
That is fine.
I think that was an action item from the last meeting to sort out the,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
schedule.
In our 30 seconds. So I'm gonna sort it out real quick.
So Josh will facilitate and
Yes.
who will take notes? I can take notes.
Why don't we ask John Kennedy to, he's the one who's been the person who has it. I have it printed out, but he was working on the new one. And it's on our Google Docs. So
But
somebody can
for
look
the
at.
notes for the next meeting. Do you want, did you do the notes before this meeting?
No,
No,
Maybe it makes sense that you do. Oh, no, would that make, yeah, that would make sense, right? Facilitation.
Sure.
It says
No.
Laura Lee would be
No.
facilitator and the recorder is Eco Club next month.
yeah, yeah, I think that.
Kind of in the summer.
It's not happening.
Next round.
August is Jess being facilitator and Josh being note taker.
That goes after Jess.
So then that's.
So the next one is Josh facilitating and Jess taking notes.
So there
we go.
We start
That was just,
Let's figure it out.
Just early.
that's fine. So
And
let's
then
just do that.
I get to do it in October
There you go.
and November.
Just follow the list,
Okay.
apparently.
All right. So that's fine. Josh can facilitate and I will take notes.
If it doesn't work for you guys, just send an email to us or the whole group and someone will
Figure it
volunteer
out.
hopefully.
All right. So does anybody make
Movement to adjourn.
seconded?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Anybody have some takeaways they want to share before we go? We'll start this way this time. Corey?
That was awesome. We got to a lot of topics.